Hello, everyone, and thank you for coming back to yet another episode of The Gloving Paradigm. I am your host, Peter, aka LPD8 Dubuque. And this week it's going to be a very different week because this isn't going to be that kind of typical episode where I kind of just divulge a bunch of information to you guys and ramble on for about 20 to 30 minutes about a certain topic in gloving. This week's going to be just way more different due to the fact that around this time of the year, most if you've been one of my listeners that have been listening since the beginning, you will know that October 10th holds a very special place in my heart due to the fact of what that day actually signifies to me. And it's one of those things that is really hard for me to talk about still to this day. It's one of those things that I feel when that time comes around, I have to talk about it because the only way to basically heal from the pain that date brings me, I have to really just kind of talk about it. So, to everyone who's been following along, I asked the question about sometime on Wednesday at the time of this recording. That was about 2 days ago, but I asked everybody what's their biggest motivation that keeps them from never stop gloving. And the main reason why I asked this is because this is what that's the topic that this episode is pretty much about. And this episode is pretty much kind of like a year in review about the show and where I've gotten to this point in my life with the show and what it actually does for me. Okay, so when I asked around, who has been your biggest motivator to never stop gloving, a lot of people have responded, which, again, everyone who has responded and commented on this question, thank you so much. I thoroughly appreciate it that you guys were willing to give me your guys' input on what motivates you and keeps you motivated to never stop. I'm not going to give out everybody's names because I feel like some people would rather keep that private, and that's totally fine with me. I would rather let you guys have your privacy. So, one person said that the motivation to get on their dream team of LLB, they have a friend that says that they know that better than anybody else. Good friend. Another person said that their best friend in life and death is who they still glove for. Some of the people's comments are somewhat humorous. I actually enjoy when people actually kind of get a little comical with that stuff. So one person did say that it's for keeping their virginity, which if you want to do that, that's totally fine. Another person said that it's their girlfriend in music, even though I can't do much tech and whips with my right hand, no pun intended. Wasn't taking it as a pun, so good for you. It's one of those things that I just find it so interesting to see what a lot of people have said. Some other people kind of said some other things, like one person said, psychedelics expanding their imagination and learning capabilities. That's their own deal. I'm not going to suggest everyone does that, but if you're one of those people that do that, that's yours. As long as you're doing it responsibly, in my eyes, it's totally fine. One person in particular said something that I still, to this day, enjoy seeing people say this because it's one of those things for me that keeps me going as well. And it says, the happiness that brings others. Another person said that it was for themselves, and another person said my constant social anxiety and compulsive need to fidget. And another person that says music that doesn't make any sense to headbang or mosh to. Kind of sounds like my younger brother because he's totally into that whole headbanging moshing stuff. That's his little deal. It's totally fine. And then I had one person who was talking about how he was doing the pulling the ladies, and it hasn't worked thus far, but he's hopeful. And I know it kind of shocked you when I said blunt force trauma and repetition gets it right every time, but all my listeners know that that's just a saying that I learned from a drill sergeant when I went through basic training for the Army. Anytime we were training and we were doing stuff that was really, really hard for us, that was his saying, is that his job was to provide the blunt force trauma and the repetition so we can get it right every time. So I know it sounds really weird and it sounds very brutal, but it's one of the things in the military that if you've gone through it, you understand where we're coming from. If you never served in the military, it's one of those things where it's kind of have to be in to understand type deal. Some people can understand by never being in the military, but some some people just can't do that, you know what I mean? So, and I don't blame that. So that was all the comments that you guys said. Again, thank you guys so much for doing that. I thoroughly appreciate you guys doing that for me. That was fantastic. So when it comes to motivators for me, I had a good amount of friends that were actually really, really supportive about it, and even to this day, like, a lot of them still are very supportive, but they don't show the amount of support like they used to. And certain ones I can understand, like a good friend of mine, Kevin. He recently, within the past couple of years, has been diagnosed with generalized epilepsy. So he suffers from seizures, of course, and unfortunately lights is now a trigger for him, as well as a couple other things. So I will certainly say it is probably one of the most heartbreaking things for me as a glover to hear that one of your best friends who supported you for a very long time in your gloving career is actually just unable to appreciate and enjoy the amount of work you put into the craft without jeopardizing their health. I can also certainly say that when it comes to my husband, he also suffers from seizures. Now, granted, we did have the light test happen for him, and they don't show any signs of any epilepsy as the cause for his seizures. However, though, he's still very cautious about that, just because I know not everybody has ever dealt with the situation of someone having a seizure, but I can certainly tell you from my own experience, it is not fun. It is probably one of the most terrifying experiences that you'll probably ever go through, and just the amount of uncertainty can really, really affect you. I will certainly say it is certainly hard where you have people who want to support you and just physically can't do so due to medical reasons. It doesn't mean that I don't have their support anymore. It just means that I won't be able to show them the amount of work that I put into it. Now, I can understand a lot of people are like, well, just do a finger show, and that's totally understandable. If I do a finger show, I'm going to be wearing my blackout gloves just so I can emulate the effect of lights with the white tips on the blackouts, because that's, that to me it's the closest thing that they're going to get to. So why not? The other thing that when it comes to people being huge motivators is well-known glovers. There was people who were saying puppets are a big motivator, materia is a big motivator, flow is a big motivator and stuff like that, like which is fantastic. Having people to kind of, I wouldn't say idolize, but just to have aspirations to be is a great thing to have, and being able to really look up to those people are also a really great thing to have. And so if you're one of those people that just you want to be like Puppet or Fry or Musk or Flo or whatever well-known glover that's out there, or a very popular one that you want to be just not just like them, but to strive to be like them, that's great. That's always a good motivator for you to have. I would certainly say the best motivator for me is actually having the friends that I had to keep me going. And there was one in particular, which everybody who's listened to the show since the very, very beginning will know who I'm talking about. And I know I've mentioned him a few times throughout the show. And I try to reserve talking about him because of how just how painful it is for me to actually keep talking about it. My friend Sabastion, who is probably one of my closest friends for a very, very long time. For about 4 years ago, he passed away, and he was just probably the best support I've ever had when it came to my gloving career. And the main reason that is because there were times where my fits of depression and my anxiety and things of that nature, where things just felt like they were losing control and everything was kind of spiraling out of control. He was the one person there when everyone was kind of like okay with me giving up the gloves, that he would actually step in and tell me that I shouldn't, because if you guys seen plenty of those movies, they're rather motivational, or they have certain dialogue in there where, like, as weird as it's gonna be me using this as a reference point, but if you guys actually remember the movie Blades of Glory with Will Ferrell and John Heater, there's a particular scene in this movie where you have John Heater going out on a date with, I can't even remember her name, but she's from The Office. I don't really care at this point. They're sitting there talking, and she's talking about how, ice skating is just a little overrated, and she apologizes, and he explains that, when he's out on the ice, that, nothing else really matters, and that's the only place that it makes sense. And for my friend Sabastion, that's pretty much the same thing he said about with me and gloving, is that when he sees me doing gloving, that he can clearly tell that, nothing else around me really matters, and that's the only place for me that makes sense to me, and I definitely agree. when I'm doing my gloving stuff, I'm in that zone, and everything around me kind of just disappears, and all my problems kind of disappear. Now, granted, I know they're going to be back when I get done, but it gives me that moment to step away and actually come back to those problems in a new perspective, and be actually able to tackle them in a different way and actually solve the problem that I would be having. So for Sabastion, though, he never really took up the art of gloving, due to the fact that his hands had quite a bit of problems at the time. But he had such a strong fascination and appreciation for the art that if it really wasn't for him, I don't think I would still be gloving to this day. And that it's one of those things that I feel really, really bad about, that I lost that kind of support over something like that. And it's something I hope that not everyone has to deal with. Like, as much as I tried to not put out a lot of my own personal information and like my own personal background stuff, because not a lot of people need to know that. When it comes to Sabastion, though, I feel like it's necessary, due to the fact that if it wasn't for him, certain things wouldn't be happening. In terms of my show as a review, I can honestly say that if Sabastion was here today, he would be extremely proud of me. Because, as much as some people might say, oh, having over 160 likes within a year is not really a great improvement, but I can certainly tell you from my experience in doing podcasting, it's a huge improvement, because the last podcast I did that I got off the internet only had 3 people liking the page, and no one listened. It really only depended on like the certain topics that I was doing, and I would have a good amount of listeners, but after that it was just nothing. Hardly anyone listened to my stuff. And I totally understand, because the market I was in was heavily saturated with enough content creators that I was just being kindling for the fire type deal, where I was just being an echo chamber, if you will. So wanting to get back into podcasting, I wanted to talk about a subject matter that I hold near and dear to my heart, and I've always been wanting to do a gloving podcast after I did my first podcast, and I don't know what kept me from doing it. It could have been my depression, it could have been just me moving around and stuff like that, but life does happen. And I just remember last year, before October 10th rolled around, I was talking to my close friend Kevin, who knew Sabastion, who in fact actually I always say he introduced me to Sabastion. And it was one of those things that with a friend introducing you to that friend, he never really expected us to bond the way that we did. And he cherishes our time together, especially when it was all 3 of us. We were kind of like a 3 amigos level of friendship right there. And it was tough when we have to talk about him after what happened. And as much as I would like to tell you guys what happened, it's really it's really difficult for me to even talk about, because it's such a sensitive subject matter for me. we would always talk about music, and anytime it came to any sort of EDM, at the time, dubstep was really really popular. I was just getting my feet wet in chillwave when we found out what chillwave was around like 2012. He fell in love with that genre as well. But every time when it came to any electronic style music, he would instantly be like, are you going to use this to practice gloving to? And he would find music to help me practice gloving to and stuff like that. And he was always that one thing that kept pushing you up the hill type deal. He was the dung beetle pushing his ball up the wall type deal. So when it came to starting this podcast, the one thing that my friend Kevin had to remind me of was Sabastion and what Sabastion did for me. So again, like all my loyal listeners who's been there since the beginning, you guys know why I started this podcast. And if it wasn't for Sabastion being who he was and pushing me so hard, the memory of him wouldn't have pushed me to commit to doing this podcast as it did. So it's just one of those things that I really wish, that I hope, especially to a lot of my listeners, that you have somebody like that, and it really allows you to feel motivated and keep that motivation to keep going, because it only really takes that one person to truly believe in you and really keep that going. So yeah, it's just one of those things when it comes to Sabastion. If it wasn't for him and his memory of him, this podcast wouldn't exist. He never told me to, he never forcibly told me to glove whenever I felt like quitting. He would literally talk to me just every single time about, I've watched you at venues, I've watched you at events, and I watched these people just light up their face with, just pure joy and happiness and just pure entertainment. And, you're just in such a zone that you can't tell what's going on around you, but at the same time, you don't care. And he's like, I see where you're truly happy, and when you're truly happy is when you are enthralled into the music and doing what you love. And I can tell gloving is what you love, and you can't let that go. And to this day, that still rings in my head every time I have a really bad day at work or a really bad week, just things just not going my way every time. That's always what comes to my mind with him. That him just knowing that I was at my happiest when I'm doing gloving, and I feel at most like myself when I'm in that state. Again, it's really hard to talk about, because it's still, even after 4 years since he's passed, it's still just one of those things that I feel it still hits me like a truck. So my parting thoughts on this subject matter is that if you have people who are very supportive about your gloving and are encouraging you to continue your gloving, I will certainly say do not let those people go, because I will certainly tell you from my own experience, losing that kind of support actually really does hurt. And it could, I hope to God it doesn't do this, but it could get people to the point where they just stop gloving altogether because they don't have that support. And I will certainly tell the people who are on teams or aspiring to get on teams, that's the one thing I feel like you need to do, is to literally just support each other and keep each other motivated. Don't let, if you can tell that this person is truly happy when they're gloving, do not let them stop. And you gotta keep pushing them to better themselves with it, because we've all talked about how much gloving has benefited us in some way. People meet new friends. It helps with people's anxiety and depression. It has all these different things that it does for people. So if you see somebody who has those kind of problems and takes up gloving and, is completely a different person when they're gloving in a better way, I would strongly encourage you to keep them in and keep them motivated to keep going. I know to a lot of the newcomers out here, when you're watching all these videos, people have been doing it for a while and they have all these crazy concepts going on and they have super clean styles and you have all these things going for them, and I understand that it can feel extremely daunting that you're dealing with that, but you have to understand that we all had to start at some point, and Sabastion will even tell you this right now, that we all started at some point in our gloving career, and the one thing that's only going to keep you from getting better is you stopping. So if you let the thoughts of you just not progressing, things are stagnating, he's going to pretty much just tell you to stop thinking like that, because even the smallest amount of progress you make, to him, it's progress that is well deserved. So even if you come up with a new concept and it looks sloppy as hell, he's going to tell you just keep working at it, because it's going to get better. Everything will get better if you just keep working at it. And that's one of the things that I hope people understand when it comes to my friend Sabastion, is that he never, every time he would be pushing people to keep going, it was never feeling like you're being pushed out the front door to keep going. You're not being dragged along in order for you to complete this task. He was literally the person on the sidelines that every time you heard them, you just got that drive to keep going. And again, it's why I started this podcast, because this is what he would want me to do. He would want me to take my passion for gloving and take how I can put things into words, and not only to show people that how much I love this art, but to help people view things in different ways, because like he would tell me all the time that you just see things differently than anybody else, and that's what pushes you into your own self in terms of my craft. So that's one of the things why I started this podcast, because I know if he was here today, he would be proud of me. I can probably sit here and be like, oh, well, I don't have a whole lot of likes. Granted, yeah, I have 160 likes and stuff, but he'd be like, that's amazing. You literally have pushed yourself beyond any point, because you have people who are listening, and you have people who actually interact with you and actually want to talk to you, and things are actually going in a direction for me that I didn't really think was going to happen. I didn't really have a whole lot of high expectations for my podcast, because of my previous podcast not doing so well. So seeing the amount of growth I've had in a year, it's been a huge boon to me. Seeing people actually want to talk to me. I've had people message me personally saying that they would like to be a guest on my show, which I know I promise you guys that I will get these interviews in. I will get these people on the show. When it comes to doing the interview stuff, that's something I just don't have experience in terms of like doing it over the computer and stuff. So I am working on that. That's something I am working on, and I'm trying to get that done so I can. But some certain things kind of just elude me, and I just need to work on it. And I'll certainly tell you the first couple of interviews are probably going to be complete crap in terms of production quality and all that stuff. But at the same time, I don't really care. I want to try to get this done. So moving forward, I will definitely try to actually make intentions to actually get people on the show, and actually really get more glovers in the community on this show, so we can actually talk more about gloving, because it's what I like to do. It's one of the things that I just like doing, is I love talking about gloving, because it's a fantastic art form. It's something completely new when it first came out, and I understand with our history of dealing with certain things like the stigma and the predisposed opinions about our art form. Things like what we're doing and not letting that bog us down is where we're going to make our most improvements. Do I ever feel like we'll ever get rid of the stigma? No, because it's kind of like one of those things, like once it's on the internet, it's there forever. So once you get a stigma like that, it's going to be stuck to you. For crying out loud, people to this day, even though when we scientifically prove it, that cannabis gives you brain damage and it kills brain cells, and they're still referring to that stupid monkey gas mask experiment that happened in like the early 50s, where we found out that it was a completely flawed, botched experiment because they didn't put any oxygen in the gas mask. So they literally suffocated the monkeys, it's just one of the things that, we just, as a community, we just need to keep pushing through and, try to do our best to decimate the stigma, so, and, I will certainly tell you this right now, that was one of Sebastian's biggest pet peeves about gloving. Is just people just go, oh, they must be on drugs. And it literally would drive him up the wall because, to him, like to all of us, it was a beautiful art form, a pure expression. And, he loved it. He absolutely loved it when he got light shows from people. He loved it when he saw people's different stories, and he loved people's different approaches to color sets and all this stuff. He was enthralled in the art. And as much as that he never gloved himself, he just loved being surrounded by it, because to him, he felt like he really got to see people's true self through it. And I definitely agree with that, especially when you put a lot of heart and soul into your art. People are going to see that. And I really hope that this episode really motivated you to, find those people that will keep you going, and, find that thing that just keeps you from never stop loving, because that's how Sebastian would be. He would never let you stop, because he wanted to see you do your best. And I know if he was here today, seeing what I was doing, he would be extremely proud and very happy to see me doing what I love. And so, this episode, of course, is going to be dedicated to my friend Sebastian. He was the one constant in my gloving career that, I would always be able to rely on. And, granted now, hey, he's not around anymore. His memory is still doing that for me. Especially on October 10th, to the point that I can still fall apart and cry and deal with the remorse in the morning of his passing. And listening to the music he listened to is the only way I feel like I can actually celebrate his life. And, recording a light show video dedicated to him every year is pretty much what I've done, just so I can, just keep his memory alive. And I'm hoping through this podcast that I keep his memory alive as well. So, that's pretty much all for my episode. I know I kind of ran on here, and I'm going to try to do as much editing as possible so I can make it a little bit more compact. But yeah, that's pretty much all for my episode. I do highly appreciate everyone who's listened to the page or listened to the show so far and liked the page. It means the entire world to me that, my work that Sebastian wants me to be doing is actually helping people in some way or form, or at least giving you guys a new way of looking at things, just to have a new perspective on how to approach your craft, and really pushing yourself to actually just keep dedicated to it. So, Sebastian, I do wish you were here. I surely do miss you, and I really wish you were here to see what I was doing. But, I understand, and hopefully there will be a day that we can actually see each other again, because holy crap, do I totally miss just talking to you just about stuff. So you guys know I have various outlets. I have a Facebook page, which is aptly named The Gloving Paradigm. I do have an email as well, at muttonchopguy@gmail.com. You can also find me on Reddit under the username muttonchopguy. And of course, I do have a Discord server, which will be linked in this episode's description. If you guys would be so kind, if you want to join on that, that's totally fine. I know I'm going to try to figure out ways to use my Discord more often. I use Discord a lot as it is, so I'm trying to figure out why I'm just having such a hard time using my own Discord server at times. So I do appreciate everyone who's listened so far. I hope that this episode gives you the motivation and gives you the drive to truly pursue your art and gloving. And if you're really pursuing it, I hope this was enough of a drive to really push you over the edge to commit to whatever you want to do, whether it be being really well at competitions or just simply like just getting the basics down to the point that you literally don't have to think, like you can do it in your sleep. Like if that's your goal, go for it. If you want to be a really good competitor, go for it. If you want to make the coolest light show videos for the internet to watch, then go for that. Like whatever you want to do with gloving, don't let anything stop you. Just go for it. That's how Sabastion would go about it. So and I understand probably some of the people are going to notice that the music soundtrack underneath this audio is different from what I'm usually doing, and again, that's just me dedicating that to Sabastion, because this is his style of music. This is what him and I really connected on before gloving really took off for me, was this style of music, and if it wasn't for him, I wouldn't be doing this type stuff. So but yes, once again, thank you for everybody who's listened, and thank you for you guys' support. I truly love you guys. You guys are absolutely amazing. But I am your host, Peter, aka LPD8 Dubuque, and I'll see you guys all next week.